Large SUVs and dual cab utes are huge business in Australia. And while most do a pretty decent job of day-to-day duties around the town, not all are created equal when the blacktop comes to an end. So we've gathered together 5 of the very best all-terrain vehicles to have launched in the last 12 months here in Australia, and we're going to find out which is the best and which is our 2023 Chasing Cars Off-Roader of the Year. In the running for our inaugural Off-Roader of the Year are 5 contenders. Ford is here with 2 vehicles, the mid-range Everest Sport V6 large SUV and high-performance, range-topping Ranger Raptor dual cab ute. Land Rover also has 2 hopefuls to fight for the title and a pair of luxury SUVs. At the pointy end is the Range Rover First Edition P530 flagship, while the Range Rover Sport SED300 provides a more affordable representative of the iconic English brand. Rounding out the fleet of 5 is Volkswagen's all-new Amarok in off-road focused PanAmericana trim. A couple of models didn't make the grade in Heat 1 testing. Lexus's LX was a strong performer, but it's mechanically very similar to the Toyota Land Cruiser, which launched and we tested in 2022. Jeep's Grand Cherokee didn't make the cut due to its high price and aging engine. And unfortunately, the Ineos Grenadier and GWM Tank 300 didn't quite arrive in Australia to make an appearance. Each of the off-roaders will be assessed with 6 key criteria: fitness for purpose, engineering, technology, packaging, efficiency and value, and finally each model's ability to holistically advance the off-roading segment. This is the Volkswagen Amarok, and this year it's the car that all eyes are on. So if this vehicle is borrowing all of the things that the Ranger does well, but then adding a little Volkswagen-ness to it, then surely this should be a really good contender. For days like today, we've got this, the PanAmericana. It's priced from about $76,000, which is on the pricey side for a ute, but by no means the most expensive. And this one has the TDI 600, which is the V6 3-litre diesel, and it makes 184 kilowatts and 600 newton meters of torque. We're putting it through some pretty gnarly obstacles. The only thing to catch it out there was the standard side steps that you get on the PanAmericana. They just caught up a little bit on some rocks, but otherwise wheel articulation is excellent. Traction levels are pretty awesome too. And this one, as it's the PanAmericana, gets 18-inch wheels, smaller than the Aventura, wearing all-terrain tires. So for this kind of environment, certainly way better suited. One of the things that is already standing out about this car is its on-road manners, which are so good, also translate really well off-road. Now, you'd forgive a car like this shaking you around a little bit when you're subjecting it to things like we are today, but actually that suspension tune, which I might add is specific to Volkswagen, is just superb off-road. It doesn't really seem to be making much difference which mode I'm in the best possible way. Nothing seems to be holding this car up too much, unlike our support car, which has just got stuck in front of us. I haven't had to go into low ratio at all today. It's been handling it all in its stride in just 4 high. And if it all gets too much beyond that, then there's a lockable rear diff as well. It's efficient on road. Its 600 newton meters of torque are very useful off-road. It'll tow beautifully. This car also gets the 3,500 kilo maximum braked towing capacity. Honestly, this V6 is such a versatile all-round unit. It will definitely be the favorite. My bum would think I'm definitely sitting in a Volkswagen. It feels firm and comfortable, just like you'd find with virtually any model in the range. But also, this steering wheel is very much a Volkswagen unit. The interior definitely says Volkswagen, while its ability off-road is definitely a good successor to the previous Amarok. This is the Ford Everest, a car that deservedly has been getting a lot of attention because it represents pretty good value. It drives excellently on the road. It's got pretty good levels of features, especially when you look around the middle of the range. And this car, the Sport, this particular version has the 3-litre turbo diesel V6, which makes 184 kilowatts, but most importantly 600 newton meters of torque, and it's coupled to an 8-speed automatic, which is excellent. It shares a lot of the underpinnings with the Ranger, obviously, but the one thing, possibly the biggest thing, is the rear axle. Where the Ranger gets a leaf spring live axle, this gets coil springs. Well, we have our first casualty in 4x4 testing. It is the Ford Everest, surprisingly enough, that has failed to proceed. I mean, what looked like not particularly serious ruts, we went in fairly gently and she is bellied out, which is often the undoing of cars like this. You can have all the traction in the world, you can have excellent all-terrain tyres, which this has both of, but if you run out of ground clearance and your belly's on the mud, there's nothing you can do other than get a Ford Ranger to pull you out, which is exactly what we're doing here. How ironic. The Everest is a resoundingly impressive machine. Very good value for money, bit of Australian patriotism in its creation, lots of standard kit for your cash, and for the main part, it's pretty good off-road. Also, worth pointing out, this car is the only 6-cylinder in its class. But as we found out today, it is not an infallible off-roader, and if you find a spot where ground clearance is an issue, you could be sticking around longer than you wanted. If I have an air of smugness about me, it's because I'm now on board the mighty Ford Ranger Raptor, a car that is getting a lot of good press for some quite hyperbolic statistics and features. For a start, twin turbo petrol V6 up front, producing 298 kilowatts and just shy of 600 newton meters of torque. But you've got other stuff like a bespoke chassis setup with Fox dampers, a completely unique chassis tune. Yeah, if any car is going to make it look effortless, it's this one. Do you know what? Every other car I've put it into low range here, but I'm going to throw caution to the wind. That was 10% throttle. Seriously, no more. This thing is astonishing. I get all the off-road modes and I have a Baja mode as well. Well, I won't be seeing if I can get airborne today, but nice to know you can. Oh, no good way of getting around that bit. Thankfully, the Raptor has lots of underbody protection, bash plates. So while all the other four-wheel drives here have varying levels of off-road ability, all-wheel drive traction, ground clearance, the Raptor does that in spades as well. But what this car brings to the all-wheel drive and off-road arena is something the others can't. Speed. This thing takes everything in its stride. It's like we need a completely bespoke Raptor off-road course just to find where this car's absolute limit is, because I don't feel like I'm going to find it today. But if you're thinking it was perfect, then think again, because there are two things that make this car perhaps not right for everyone. First of all is the price. $86,000 or $87,000 before you chuck in any on-roads and that kind of thing is on the pricey side. But second to that is its towing capacity. With its special suspension that makes it so astonishing off-road at speed as well, it hacks a whole ton out of its maximum braked towing capacity when compared with the rest of the Ranger lineup. For 5 generations now, Range Rover has been providing the well-heeled a way of getting around in complete luxury, regardless of what the terrain does ahead. This is the all-new Range Rover. Let's start with the big numbers, what this car costs. If you don't have a huge amount of money to spend on a Range Rover, you could go for the entry-level version, which will cost you a measly $220,000. But if you've got a little bit more cash to spend than that, you could go for this. This is the P530, and it'll cost you $313,000. So we're going to go off-road in it, obviously. If you think that's a lot of cash, though, it can get an awful lot worse. If you go for the top of the range Range Rover, you can spend nearly $400,000. But what do you get for that cash? Now, obviously, it would be very uncouth and quite undignified to break a sweat whilst one off-roads. So there are a number of features to make life much more relaxing, regardless of what the way ahead looks like. The Range Rover has air suspension and 3 different ride heights. If in doubt, go for off-road 2, which is, I think, about 300 millimeters of ground clearance, or just under, which pretty much means you could drive over small islands in this car. You can lower it back down with a touch of a button on the touch screen. Very simply, go down to off-road 1 and the comfort increases because you've got yourself a little bit more flexibility in the upper range of suspension travel. And really, where this car shows its true genius is in this digital display, because there are so many electronic features to make off-roading an absolute treat. Tap the camera button and the Range Rover gives you an amazing array of ways to make sure your Range Rover ends an off-roading day just as beautiful as it started. The 3D camera is like nothing I've seen before. You've got an amazing three-dimensional image of the car, even in the correct color, I'm pleased to see. But you've also got a number of virtual cameras positioned all around the Range Rover that you can just pick from and see what's going on outside the car. It's like I'm having some kind of out-of-body experience. But then the other thing I absolutely love is the transparent car or bonnet feature, which means the 360-degree cameras positioned around the car use the image of the terrain coming up and put it through a special algorithm that makes the car disappear, which is witchcraft. And it's not just a gimmick, it genuinely works really, really well. From the comfort of the cabin of the Range Rover, I can make sure I'm not about to drive over anything embarrassing like peasants. Yes, the Range Rover is a lot of money, whether you go for the entry level, middle or top of the range. But trust me when I say this, if you ever decide to invest the significant cash on an example, it really is worth it. And there's not really any car out there that interprets off-road travel quite like this one. Or is there? This is the Range Rover Sport, and it promises much of the Range Rover Big Daddy's appeal, but wraps it up in a slightly smaller, slightly lighter and slightly sportier body. I guess that's why they call it the Range Rover Sport. The key difference though, think of this car like a Range Rover Lite, and with its slightly smaller proportions, it gets a significantly smaller price tag. We're in the one up from entry level spec here, the SED300, and that means it costs approximately half what our Range Rover does, $151,000. Now I know that's still quite a lot of cash, but when you look at what you're getting, it makes quite a lot of sense. It doesn't get quite all the tricks and equipment of the full fat Range Rover, but you do get an awful lot of gear to help things go smoothly off-road. So I've got air suspension, just like the Range Rover, and I've got that set to the off-road 2 setting, so maximum ride height. Still around about 280 millimeters of ground clearance, so should be plenty for our off-road course. And already, this car is negotiating our obstacles and challenges with almost exactly the same amount of ease and composure of the full-size Range Rover. And once again, the thing that is most surprising are the traction levels. Now, unlike some of our other 4x4s, which are rolling on all-terrain tyres with some quite serious knobbles on them, yes, that is a word, this is on 22-inch alloy wheels and Pirelli Scorpion tyres, which are, albeit geared for the more all-terrain environment, but it looks on the outside like a car that should only ever stay on the blacktop. But here we are, tackling some quite serious off-road challenges. I do also get the incredible 3D surround view courtesy of those 360-degree cameras, and just like the Range Rover, I can pick views. It'll even do the weird phantom car so I can see what's going underneath it. It doesn't actually do the invisible bonnet view, which is a shame because I love that feature, but to all intents and purposes, you're getting an awful lot of the Range Rover's equipment and ability in this car, essentially half price. The Range Rover is a staggering car off-road. It brings incredible lux and grace, regardless of where you're going, on or off-road, but then absolutely extraordinary off-road ability. That car went places we simply weren't expecting. The question I'm asking is, does the Range Rover Sport have half the off-road ability for half the price tag? And the answer to that is quite simply no. It's only a fraction less capable on surfaces like this. The luxury is amazing. Comfort and premium feel is exactly what you'd expect from a car with a Range Rover badge. So for me, this looks like the absolute sensible money in the Range Rover family. While the Range Rover Sport asserted itself well during testing, it didn't quite match the off-road capabilities of our top 3. Given the Ford Everest was the only competitor to falter on our tough off-road course, it too failed to make the final cut. Now onto our top 3. Yes, the Range Rover First Edition P530 is a lot of cash, but it's not until you spend some quality time with it that it becomes clear just how much substance is included in the price. For day-to-day duties, there's an unrivaled level of luxury and comfort that makes every trip feel special, whether it be the silky ride, almost endless comfort touches, and impressive materials and quality throughout. But for a vehicle to offer all that luxury and then go on to demonstrate best-in-class all-terrain ability takes this premium SUV into another realm. Literally. Away from the beaten trail, its mountain of torque makes light work of serious obstacles without breaking a sweat. Excellent technological solutions to off-road challenges, combined with traditional mechanical know-how, and all the time providing more of that opulent ride quality. For those with the budget, the ultimate Range Rover is worth every cent. It should come as no surprise that a vehicle based on what was already shaping up to be Australia's best dual-cab ute should continue to perform impressively following its Volkswagen transformation. On tricky terrain, there's every bit of the Ford Ranger's breadth of ability, thanks to the strong V6 diesel engine, sophisticated but tough transmission, and durability that carries over. However, Volkswagen's local design team have infused an even greater sense of quality and touches that take the Amarok into premium territory without compromising off-road confidence. It comes at a slight cost premium, measure for measure, but given Australia's demand for high-quality, high-specification vehicles, the second-generation Amarok in off-road leaning PanAmericana grade is an incredibly good fit for Australia. Perhaps it should be called the Pan-Australiana. The Ford Ranger Raptor is quite simply in a class of its own. Unstoppable off-road ability made our test track look frankly easy, is packed full of technology, and it comes at a bargain price. But what really sets this car apart from the competition is that V6 turbo petrol under its bonnet. Road or trail, the Raptor is fast everywhere, and that makes it quite unique. The Ford Ranger Raptor is our 2023 Chasing Cars Off-Roader of the Year. In just 5 all-terrain vehicles, we've seen 5 completely different personalities, and some of them have surprised us, others not at all. Did we make the right decision for our Chasing Cars Off-Road Vehicle of the Year? Let us know in the comments below. And if you've liked this video, hit subscribe and like. And even if you didn't, just subscribe anyway. Thanks for watching Chasing Cars.